Hello and welcome to another Scoutcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. My name is David.
My name's Az.
And my name's Lee.
Welcome everyone.
Juice roster.
Yeah, exactly. It's another Scout video where I'm filling in for Joe, who is on his holidays and not, in the words of Mafio Sol from the YouTube comment section, usurped and expecting an ice pick brain wedge in the post from his temporary exiled location. I can assure you, he is just on his holidays. It's nothing any more sinister than that. So yeah, that's all cleared up. Luke, can you tell us what's on today's show?
Of course I can. I can only imagine John T is holidaying somewhere really boring like Brighton. But anyway, on another note. Yeah, obviously it's all the rage at the moment. Blanks, double game weeks, the chips. What we're going to do with them. I know it's been the rage for a while. Always a hot topic, but we've got a little bit more information now. Cup draws and results have sort of paved the way a little bit. So we'll be diving into that. We'll also be looking at the immediate game week, which is, of course, a bit of a blank game week coming up soon. Manchester City, Sergio Aguero, are red hot at the moment. They're not playing this week. So what are you going to do with them if you've got them? If you've got them, fair play, because I certainly haven't. We're going to give our thoughts on what you want to do with that. Those assets. Do you want to get rid of them? Do you want to do the hokey cokey? Aubameyang has been thrown about, and I think it was an original plan. Some people might be getting cold feet on that swap. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the team of the week, which is Chelsea, because their FA Cup results have sort of resulted in an interesting set of fixtures for them. They now got 2 blank game weeks, as well as potentially. Sorry, they play in both the blank game weeks, and also they've got a double potentially with Brighton, or maybe even a triple. We're not really sure where that's going to fit in. So Chelsea investment is looking good on paper, but obviously form-wise, been pretty shocking. So yeah, that's what we got coming up, and I think we're going to look at game week 26 briefly. If we can bear to go through it, I'm sure Az can, because he got a pretty good score.
I did, and finally top of the pile. I think for the first time in months, which is quite nice. Yeah, it's good. Pogba, Sterling did the business. Son I bought in. Robertson with 9 points. Shaw came off my bench for Rashford, which was good. A lot of people got Wan-Bissaka, and I got Shaw, which was nice. So yeah, actually a really good game week for a change. It feels like so long ago that I won't go into too much more detail because I can't really remember it. So let's just hope the next game week is as good.
Yeah, and David, what did you get? I think you beat me because mine was pretty poor.
Well, I mean, it was going pretty poorly until my subs came in. It was another one of those game weeks where I didn't have the right Man City assets as per usual. Has actually been the case for a lot of people the last couple of weeks. I had Sané still. This one was extra painful because I sold Sterling to get Son. Son delivered, yes, but not on the same scale as Sterling, and Sané didn't play. But him and Rashford not playing, that meant that I got Barnes in. So finally, after weeks and weeks this season of having Barnes on my bench, I still have Barnes on my bench, but I finally got a double figure haul out of him, and really that's what saved me. That's what kind of put me in a similar bracket of score as the people who had the right Man City players. So it wasn't as painful as it could have been. So I got a little bit lucky with the benchings, Rashford especially. So
I told you not to sell Sterling, David.
Yeah, I know. I should have listened. But yeah, so then Luke, you are on 55. So yeah, another tough week for you.
Yeah, me and Az are good at giving advice. We're just shocking ourselves. Bear that in mind, apart from this week.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, I was really happy with my transfers. I swapped out Hazard and Richarlison, who got virtually nothing. I mean, they're both blanks. I swapped them for Pogba and Mane, and that was for a hit. So overall, I netted 20 points on that return. But yeah, still finished so far behind because at the end of the day, I had Mr. Aubameyang, who decided to be sick and further stick the boot in after not doing the swap to Aguero. And yeah, the overriding sort of theme here is I didn't have the right Man City players. I had Sané, and Aguero continued his absolute tear. No Sterling. So yeah, missed out on the big. I think it was 6 goals, 6-0. I think it was. Missed out on points there. My defence was just a cluster, really. David Luiz ended up getting auto sub for Aubameyang, so he got -1 because of the 6 goals he conceded. Rest of them all turned in with sort of 1-pointers. So yeah, good transfers. Midfield absolutely smashed it for me. The rest of the team, diabolical.
Yeah, I think that was case for a lot of people that actually midfield did all right. It's just it didn't go as well as it could have done, especially anyone who had Son, because I think people were expecting a lot more out of him from that game. But obviously the recurring theme of what we've just discussed there is the fact that we basically again didn't have Aguero when he went nuclear again. So it was back-to-back home hat-tricks for him, and he's obviously now the key player that we're going to talk about this week. And really, that's mainly because he doesn't have a fixture. And the big question a lot of people have been discussing is if I'm holding Aguero, then what do I do with him if he's not going to play? Bearing in mind, I'm probably going to want him afterwards. So, Shirtless has said, should Aguero hokey cokiers, which is a great term, by the way. I hope they all get T-shirts with that on. Should they still go through with that move, as in to swap him out this week and bring in Aubameyang? Or are there other better captain options than Arsenal? So he suggested maybe still go for Lacazette or maybe someone outside of Arsenal. Amy said, is an Aubameyang, Aguero / Higuain cycle until game week 31 a good idea? So he suggested getting Aubameyang in for 27, then Aguero back for 28, 29 and 30, and then Higuain for 31, 32 and 33. We'll talk about Chelsea a little bit more later, but that's just to kind of give you the idea of what some people are thinking about with the premium options. And then Aidan's just asked, what do we do with Man City assets in general in blank game week 27? Should we bench them with game week 28 onwards in mind, because fixtures then, or should we be looking to Arsenal for the next 2 game weeks? 2 nice fixtures there as well. So let's start with you, Az, on this particular subject. I know you don't have Aguero, but let's say hypothetical situation you did. What would you be doing with him for this game week?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I've learned this season, it's just how precious a transfer is. And I know the hokey cokey can work, but when you're going into a period like we're going into soon, with so many blanks, so many doubles, so much uncertainty, to me, using a transfer to transfer out a player who's just scored pretty much back-to-back hat-tricks for Aubameyang, who hasn't exactly set the world alight over the last few months, and then you're probably going to want Aguero straight back in because he's got West Ham at home the week after. It just seems completely wrong to me to do. And I know Aubameyang could score quite well this week. I know he could be one of the best captains, but you're using 2 transfers to essentially swap players. And when our teams are already pretty decimated this week, you could use that transfer to bring in someone like a Leicester player who then covers you for this blank and the next one. Or you could bring in Pereira, you could bring in Vardy, you could bring in a Liverpool player. There are decent teams out there. Well, Leicester aren't that decent at the moment, but their fixtures are. Who could get you some points. So I would be prioritising players who've got a fixture in the next blank. That's kind of my strategy. I think Liverpool and Leicester are the 2 standouts there, and I wouldn't be getting rid of Aguero if I had him. I mean, I just would want him back straight away. And we know with Kane early in the season, getting a player in for 1 week is never that good an idea. So that's my take on it. I would not be selling Aguero if I had him. And I think from next week, you need a Man City player, because now we're getting to business end of the season. Man City are going to be gunning for this. The actual pool of Man City players is diminishing, with Sané now not really an option. It's Aguero and Sterling for me as the two main guys attacking wise. You get them both, or you get one of them and you stick with them to the end.
Yeah, I mean that's very close to what I've been thinking. What about you, Luke?
Yeah, I'd say I'd largely agree with that. I will point out that, though, you said you don't do it for 1 week, but I think that's what most people had in mind when they bought in Aguero for his hat-trick and triple captain, although I suppose it is a double game week, so I'll kind of let you off, but it was kind of a 1 week swap in theory, and then back, and that handsomely paid off. So who says it can't happen again at the end of the day? The past doesn't necessarily dictate the future.
Well, the issue with that was the people that then did the transfer back. So all the people that did Aubameyang to Aguero, and then Aguero back to Aubameyang, and then missed a hat-trick.
Yeah, exactly.
It shows it's knowing when to kind of call it, isn't it? It's another uncertainty in a period when.
Well, it just shows that it can go both ways. And at the end of the day, hindsight often makes us make what would have been the right move. I mean, at the end of the day, Aubameyang to me looks the standout captain this week. I could argue West Ham look pretty good just on the basis that Fulham are dreadful defensively. So if you're a sort of an out there move, then that's someone sort of consider Felipe Anderson and Altovich, for example. But yeah, I mean, Aubameyang, it's that safety and numbers thing. People will be tempted because it was the original plan, and some people are just logic. They're cold heart, and they'll do that. And who says he can't score 3 or 4 goals? And you've got £11 million on your bench. So I can see it from the other way. However, having said all that, I tend to agree with what Azza said. It doesn't seem to be the kind of time to sort of spend these luxury transfers. Now that will differ from every individual, of course, what their team setup is. And if you're in a position where you feel like you've got a luxury one, I would highly consider it. But aside from that, I mean, the form Aguero's in at the moment, like says, you're going to want him straight back, I would have thought. It seems mad to get rid of him. But then the game's there. I'm so on the fence. I don't know.
It's just a difficult one, isn't it? Because you've got the fact that there's no risk really this week. Like you take Aguero out for Aubameyang. It's not like
Aguero can't hurt you this week.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it. You really can't. And Aubameyang could really hurt you. But it's all ifs, buts, maybes, coulds. Southampton. I can speak sort of from experience from this. I've captained a lot of players against Southampton and Aubameyang for one of the games, I think, against Southampton's other one. And yeah, got absolutely nothing. So I captained Sané against Southampton, that's for sure. I can't remember if Aubameyang was the one. He got 1 point, he came off the bench. But they've let me down a lot. I remember looking through my list, there's about 3 or 4 times I captained a player against Southampton and they just didn't do anything for me. So that's kind of...
Look at their clean sheets and our clean sheets differentials. It's shocking for you.
Mm.
That's what it's all about, Luke. That's all you care about, I know.
Yeah, truly. It's all I lay away thinking about. Dave, you're the man who's flying high amongst us. What are you looking?
Well, I mean, I was just going to bring just a few stats to think, just to kind of back up everything you kind of already said in favour of just holding Aguero. Because I mean, it's hard to argue against having him in your team if you've got him in right now. I mean, people can see on the screen right now, top for shots on target last 4 game weeks, and obviously he has played more games, but of course he didn't play the full complement in a lot of those because he got the job done before the hour mark, for the 70-minute mark, and was brought off then. So really, I still think he's comparable with these other players across the last 4 game weeks. Top for shots as well, joint top for shots as well with Pogba as well. It's just hard. It's hard to look past him. And then just the other thing is, if you then look at the fixtures that Man City have after game week 27 as well,
incredible.
They're so good. And so then again, what we've got on the screen right now is goal attempts conceded in the box last 4, and that's bottom 5 here. And Watford, West Ham, Bournemouth, Man City's next 3 opponents, all in the bottom 5 for that. So Man City are going to have a hell of a lot of opportunities to shoot, and Aguero is going to be a big part of that. And people will be worried, I guess. I mean, I think we have to admit that the next sort of 6 weeks is going to be, slightly different to what we've had in the last 6 weeks. So Aguero played a lot, started lots of games, but there wasn't really much in the way of difficult fixtures outside the Premier League in terms of they had the cups and things. What they've got now is the Champions League, which are big games that they need to be putting a lot of effort into. So there might be slightly more rotation, but I don't think it's going to be enough to put people off. So
I think Aguero's shown this season, though, really, when he's been fit, he's generally played. I mean, it's a general rule. I mean, there's been a few circumstances, and obviously earlier in the season he was coming off early a lot. But then Jesus was largely not part of the season until Aguero sort of got injured a bit, and then he came in and he was in good form, fair to him. But ever since Aguero came back again, he just seems to have taken back over again where it started. So those fixtures just look so scary. And to not have Aguero for them is definitely concerning. I mean, they score so many goals, City. They scored 6 against Chelsea. I know Chelsea have been rubbish of late, but it's still impressive to do that. A lot of teams would just sort of set up shop after they've got 3 or 4 and not bother, but City carry on. And if you catch them at the right period, you can be hitting 5-6 goals in each game. They could score 5-6 in all of those games. Equally, there has been periods when I've tripled up on them where they haven't scored for 3 weeks in a row. So it can happen to them, but it's just least likely of all the teams, I think. And City, you're sort of your golden bet, your golden ticket.
And I think you've got Edison, Laporte, Fernandinho, Sterling, Aguero. They're first choice. They are going to play most games. You might get the odd bit of rotation, but you could get the odd bit of rotation with anyone. I think those players they're not immune from it, but they're going to start pretty much every match. City are playing catch up in a title race. Like they're their best players. Jesus isn't doing it. Mahrez isn't doing it. Sané is
I would add KDB to that list. I think injuries just
true
there now, but yeah.
And it's just whether they kind of he's a bit bit shakier because of the injury and the fact they're probably saving a bit more for the Champions League, and they've been doing kind of all right without him. I don't know. I think Aguero. I would not advise not getting Aguero or Sterling just because you're worried about rotation, because to me they're going to play pretty much every match, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But just
I mean, I was going to say, we mentioned Lacazette.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Yeah. No, I think the thing is, with the other angle with the Arsenal guys, of course, is that Aubameyang might not actually necessarily play, because of course Lacazette's been sent off in the Europa League, so that means he's not available. It means Aubameyang is going to have to start a game where they really need to win, because to lose that opening leg to Bate Borisov was just embarrassing for them, really, and they do need to kick on. So there's a chance, it's a couple of days before the Southampton game, that Aubameyang might not even play. And just in terms of comparison of Aubameyang versus Lacazette last few weeks, Lacazette has actually looked the better option. So for anyone who doesn't actually have an Arsenal striker but would like one, I'd go for Lacazette, because he's more likely to start. I think, even though Aubameyang's not been benched for a while, I think we can all say that with Lacazette getting that rest on Thursday night, he will play that Sunday game. But then he's better for minutes per chance and minutes per chance created over the last 4 game weeks than Aubameyang. And so, if you are going to get an Arsenal striker, I would actually get Lacazette. I wouldn't get Aubameyang if I'm doing that hokey cokey.
I mean, I know Lacazette's been really sharp himself compared to what we've seen of him since he joined the league, really. But I still just feel like Aubameyang will play most of the minutes as he's done before, and I still feel fantasy-wise, Aubameyang just seems on another level to Lacazette. Maybe it's just a psychological thing, because you say like his minutes per shot and stuff are actually better for Lacazette. But still, part of me would worry about having Lacazette over Aubameyang.
I actually think when they play together, Lacazette's a better option, because Aubameyang goes out further.
Aubameyang gets penalties and everything. Yeah, but he's good off the left.
Yeah, true.
Lacazette's just been in really good form. The thing is with Lacazette, I always feel like he's one sort of bad or ineffectual game away from just not being seen again, which Arsenal haven't really had the luxury of, because they've had lots of injuries, but people are coming back now. Whereas Aubameyang seems pretty much guaranteed to play. Obviously, he has a slight doubt because of the Europa League, like you say, but I still think he'll see minutes.
I think you're looking at Arsenal for the next 2 games, aren't you? They've got Southampton, and then who they got after that? Someone rubbish. They've got 2 good games, I know. And like, if you're looking at really in the short term, I think David's right in that Lacazette is going to play both of those games.
It's Bournemouth, yeah.
It's Bournemouth, yeah, exactly. So after that game, are you going to want to keep Aubameyang if you had him? And if you're not, then I would prefer Lacazette for those 2 games, personally. Yeah, you're obviously going to be worried about Aubameyang, because...
Yeah, I guess it's just like we've said, we're not really happy to waste transfers at the moment, and Lacazette feels like a transfer out at some point. Now, I know the chips could play into your hands where you don't need to consider that, and that's fair enough. But otherwise, Lacazette always feels like to me a temporary solution. I get it, but it could just be psychological more than anything else. Have we lost David,
No, I'm still here.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell on this.
But did you mean on the stream, or just had you confused me? Because you hadn't confused me, don't worry.
I hadn't heard you speak for a little while. I was shocked, because normally, you're all over the place, David, chatting, talking all over us, everything.
Yeah, I was known as a chatterbox growing up. No, just as this is the first time that I've actually hosted, I'm making sure everything's going okay. I know there's a few people in the chat saying that there's a few sound issues. I am working to try and resolve that. I will do my best. So that's why I was just letting you guys have a natter. But plenty to get your teeth into. And like you said, I definitely agree with what I said there about Lacazette. For me, actually looks like a more long-term option. He's not really a long-term option, but he seems like a more long-term option than Aubameyang. Just based off the fact we're sure he's going to play both games. So yeah.
I don't think any Arsenal players are a long-term option, are they?
No, not yeah. I mean, it's those 2 games more than anything else. But Lacazette, as you say, I think will play both definitely. Whereas I don't think you can say that about Aubameyang.
Yeah, I suppose it's just Arsenal's form as well plays into this. I mean, they just lost against Farmers. Do you know what I mean? And it's like they might have good games, but how much confidence we got? I think it was only 2-1 versus Huddersfield.
Yeah.
Chelsea just beat them with a lot of goals scored. Mm-hmm. They're conceding goals to everyone. So there is that factor as well. I know the fixtures are there, but I wouldn't say they're... I mean, there's other teams where I think their form and fixtures are probably of equal pairing or even better. So they're not really in my mind personally. I just happen to have Aubameyang at the moment. I wish that guy was Aguero instead, believe me, but there we go.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our team for this week then, which will come to you on this one and it's the team that featured on Monday night in the FA Cup. and they lost to Man United in what was a very good performance for Man United, but not so much for the home team Chelsea. So a lot of people talking about them for good reason. So let's dig straight in.
Yeah, and just say yours sounds better, apparently, David. So whatever you did seems to work. Yes, we're talking about Chelsea, and yeah, I mean they are in an absolutely awful run of fixture. I don't know how long Sarri's got left. I'm surprised he lasted the day. To be honest, I thought after that he was probably going to be gone. I think when you come out and say that you've got no plan B and all you can do is play one way and it's not working, it just seems such a weird statement. I thought that was a really odd thing to say after that defeat. But anyway, Fabinho says Higuain can provide decent value if he can find his scoring boots over Chelsea's good run. Should we be looking at him? A Texi says Chelsea's FA Cup exit leaves a lot of hokey cokey, which I think is the buzzword for today, potential. Who's worth keeping in the Chelsea squad? Who will be worth buying come Game Week 31? Cuzza says, now with Chelsea playing in Game Week 31, I'm not sure whether to keep Hazard or not. What would you do? Comes the Son with loads of questions on Chelsea. Here comes the Son. I currently have 6 players who play in Game Week 31. I was going to lose Alonso, but now what do I do? Get rid of Alonso, probably. I can handle this week on the bench since only him and Sterling Blanks in my squad. The last question, Super Ham. Chelsea and Everton, with last week's result, they will now both play in the blank game week. Provided we can make it through Game Week 27, should we be keeping the likes of Haddad, Alonso, and Richarlison in order to navigate this game week? I think it ties into the kind of blank game week, and now Chelsea have a fixture in that. It's weird how the teams who are actually less attractive because they're out of the FA Cup and probably not doing so well are actually the teams we're now kind of clamoring to get in. It kind of adds a horrible dimension to these blanks, doesn't it? Because you're kind of having to use transfers to bring in players who aren't necessarily in good form or that you really want. You're planning ahead. It's quite tricky to plan. What are you thinking, Luke? Chelsea players? Got any? Louise, right?
Again, it's almost a form versus fixtures thing again. I mean, on paper, they play the blanks. They potentially got an attractive double or even maybe a triple. So sort of loading up on them after this week's, I couldn't argue against that on paper, but it's just that whole form thing at the moment. They're just all over the place. So, and most of their good assets are very expensive. So there's that to factor in as well. And we have said it before, football, a week's a long time in football, things can change. And it did for Chelsea against Huddersfield. One week they suddenly were good again and then they went back. So I suppose it could happen. But we said it before. I think Chelsea had been worked out. They got worked out a little while ago. Jorginho's getting targeted. And with no plan B, I just don't know what they're going to do about that because everyone knows what to do against them. So for me, I'd be tempted to maybe hold Louise because I just think that they still could get clean sheets occasionally. And he's obviously got other things in his locker. He's got bonus points. He's got big assist potential. He's always playing penetrative through balls. He can score from corners and stuff. So I think he's still a decent option to hold. I wouldn't be looking at Hazard at all at the moment. To be honest, I just think he's too expensive. There's too many good midfield options. But Higuain, I must admit, does still interest me. I still really am a big fan of him, and I still think he can score goals. At the moment, I'm not sure where they're coming from, but he has got some nice fixtures, obviously, and he plays the blank. So I will be looking to get him in probably at some point in the next 3 or 4 weeks for Aubameyang, maybe. But a lot of their form is probably going to dictate that as to whether I actually go through with that move. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, it's really tricky, isn't it? Because it is like you say, it's a classic case of when we look at the schedule ahead of us, it does look very nice for them, but they're such an enigma of a team because, as you say, you never really know what you're going to get from them. They look like the kind of team that can march to a routine 2-0 win over someone fairly poor, but then get beaten 6-0 by Man City, or lose a home FA Cup game against a team who haven't won at Stamford Bridge since Sir Alex Ferguson was in charge. All of these sort of records that keep getting broken for them that are awful, but then they tick along with a good result every now and then. It was tricky. I mean, just on the Sarri thing, he looks like he's probably going to go, but it's just weird, isn't it? Because so many managers have come in with philosophies and been given time. It'd be interesting to see if he is given the whole season, because if he's prepared to change. But I think that's the bottom line, is he just doesn't have a plan B. That's the thing that frustrates me the most as a fantasy manager. I'm not so bothered about Chelsea doing badly, generally, but just as a fantasy manager, there's so many great players there, but you're playing one of the best defensive midfield players in the world as a number 10, and it just doesn't make any sense. And
I don't get what he is, what his tactics are, like this whole Sarri ball thing. Like I just can't quite work out.
I don't even know what Sarri ball is. I know it's a
no.
term. I think it's something to do with passing, but from watching Chelsea, you'd have absolutely no clue.
Well, it was, from what I understand, it was forward passes, very direct on the floor. So, not hoofing the ball, but basically switching defence into attack extremely quickly and manipulating the ball in that way. That's my understanding of it. And
Do they do that?
Well, exactly. I mean, but you always hear him saying that they're not playing how he's told them, and he's not playing. So basically, they can't do it, or they don't understand it. The players, I don't think, help. But it's substitutions. They're just like for like all the time as well. He doesn't mix.
He never changes it up, does he?
No.
Honestly, he doesn't have a plan B for subs, let alone his first team. So
yeah, I mean, we know Chelsea. We've been here before with Chelsea. I would be surprised if he stays on. As soon as Hazard stops doing anything, it's usually a warning sign for the manager as well. If you can't get, and let's face it, he is one of the best players in the world, playing well and doing things. I mean, you've got Higuain. Higuain's got that goal record. You've got Hazard. You've got the best defensive midfielder in the world. You've got one of apparently the best goalkeepers in the world. Your defence is solid compared to most defences out there. I know Alonso's been a bit of a cluster recently, but you've got talent all over the pitch, really. So I mean, you compare them to a lot of the other squads that are doing better than them. Arsenal are arguably been doing better than them recently, and I don't think their squad's any better, for example. So yeah, I can only see it going one way, but that could potentially benefit us at the end of fantasy football. If someone else comes in, suddenly things could change. It could be similar to the Solskjaer effect. We just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, looking at Chelsea's fixture, I mean, they've got Spurs at home this week, and then Fulham away. So decent, good fixture attacking wise and defensive wise. You probably think they're probably going to get a good result in that game. Then they've got Wolves at home. That could go either way. Everton away, never really know kind of who you're going to get. Cardiff away, decent. West Ham at home, I don't know. That's a tricky one. They're not amazing fixtures, are they?
It's a mixed bag. It's just that they play all the games more than anything, more than the actual standard of them. It is a mixed bag.
Like defensively and attacking wise, I wouldn't expect any massive wins in that, or even that many clean sheets. So I'm going to be avoiding. Maybe for 30, maybe for the blank.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at them for Game Week 31. As you say, the fixtures are all right. They're not amazing, which actually, to be fair, I think helps us a bit. Just to bring some stats to it, like they don't look like a team worth investing in. We've kind of seen that from the eye test, but statistically, that looks to be the case as well. So if you look at big chances created over the last 4 game weeks, they're 12th in the league. So many teams above: Brighton, Liverpool, Leicester, Arsenal, Palace, Man United, Burnley, even Fulham, Spurs, Wolves, who apparently don't create too many chances. Man City obviously ahead of them as well. Several teams are ahead of them in terms of quality chances created. So then that doesn't particularly bode well for Hazard, doesn't bode well for Higuain, although Higuain is still kind of finding his feet. So, maybe that could change. It's the same defensively as well. Basically, over the last 4 game weeks, nobody has conceded more big chances than Chelsea. I think that's probably largely going to be influenced a bit by the Man City game, because obviously they really were opened up in that game. But there was just one game to be bottom of the pile below Huddersfield over that period. It really does say a lot about their defence. And the goals they conceded against Man United were just so sloppy. I mean, Alonso at the back post. I mean, if you can't track the run and a guy of his height not be able to get in and compete for a header with Ander Herrera, something is seriously wrong. And then the same with Pogba's goals. It was a good goal, very nicely worked. But again, he started the move off in midfield, played the ball out to Rashford, and the time it's taken for Rashford to get into positions across the ball, Pogba's gone from practically the centre circle to the penalty spot, beat 2 defenders in the air to score a header, and so
it's ridiculous.
It's really poor. And so then that, to me, I mean, obviously, people are going to be having it's obviously tempted to keep Luiz, and I think I probably would hold him if I had him right now, because really the situation that I mean, we're going to talk about chip strategies in a bit, but I would like to use Chelsea in that game week, because away at Everton, I mean, that particular fixture is who wants to lose it more right now, because they're 2 teams that are just in such poor form that actually I could see Chelsea maybe winning that 2 or 3-0 just on Everton being worse than them.
Well, it's also 4 weeks away, like we said, so things exactly. Change.
I mean, that's the key. Is I think that I'm glad that we've got this little window to kind of to size them up and see if they can come back from the results they've had. Maybe they can win a couple of games against the lesser teams in a quite routine fashion, as we have actually seen them do in recent weeks. And I think that the person I'm probably looking at the most is probably Higuain, because I think Hazard has burned enough people and burned me enough times to make me think that even when his stats look good, that doesn't necessarily mean he's ready to go into my team. But Higuain's goal scoring record and his pedigree in recent years, if he can just sort of find a bit of form, if I'm going to be...
Also, he's just the cheapest nailed option into their attack, really.
Exactly. I mean, that's the bottom line. He carries a bit less risk than a couple of the other options in that bracket, but also he's one of the few people in that bracket in that position who's going to play that game.
Yeah, he doesn't use a midfield spot.
Yeah, I was going to say, his other trump card is being a forward, which obviously there isn't very many good ones.
Especially in that particular game week. And I think... when we get to that, I mean, most people are going to be how they set up game week 31. They're going to be probably setting it up as either that's the last game week before their wild card, or they're free hitting, right? So if that's the case, Chelsea options are going to get signed up in some way. Higuain is probably the one I'd look at, but we do just need. I just think, where they're at right now, they've got some work to do, and I think looking at the schedule, if they can have improved a bit by the time they play Fulham, then maybe that's the week I get Higuain in, because, again, Fulham just look like the kind of team that, yes, Chelsea can't defend very well, but Fulham, I think we could still all agree, defend worse than Chelsea generally. So that could be maybe when we start to slot some Chelsea players in. But, of course, it does kind of depend on the double game week announcements as well. So lots up in the air on Chelsea still, I think.
Yeah, and I think Higuain and Luiz are the two that I will probably have, and I think are the two best options. I wouldn't necessarily scrap to have them, as I already have Luiz personally, but like you say, if you're free hitting, I could see those two being very popular for that week.
Obviously, we've mentioned some chips there, so it's a nice little segue into what is really what everybody's come here to discuss. I think that's judging by all the questions that we had come in this week. It was just, let's talk about chips. So let's talk about chips. And those who are watching on YouTube will be able to see Theresa May working out what her chip strategy is, and what she decided it was to look like that. But that's on her. Yeah,
and it's all going to fall apart like Brexit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So Sabudu Advokar says, what is the best chip strategy? What a good question that is. That wasn't being sarcastic. I'd like to know the answer too. Cop Cloppers says, a lot of talk about future chip use, but there's around 30% of us who don't have a free hit chip. So please give us your advice. What would you do? Hustler7 says, what is the best chip strategy for those who have used their wild cards? So again, similar, he's used one of his chips. So what's the best option there? Lego Mane says, is wildcard in game week 28 a viable option for managers who don't have any City coverage? So we're all talking about that. We're pretty scared of not having much. Alternatively, if you're going the free hit 32 route, is saving a free transfer this week and mini wildcarding in 2 or 3 City assets next week and prioritising them over sort of getting blank game week players in 31 and 33. Is this going to sort of be a more beneficial strategy because they've got West Ham, Bournemouth, Watford, we said. So target those games, hopefully get a lot of goals and largely ignore the blanks or use some hits to sort of patch that up. Is that another thing we're not really looking at? And I can see some value in that. I can see what you're saying there. So, as quite a lot there. General chip strategy. Have you settled on what you're going to do, first of all?
No, I keep changing. I mean, I like the idea of a free hit in a blank because I think a lot of people were unprepared for them, and it gives you a really strong team, and gives you a real advantage against people who have already used the chips. At the same time, it's quite nice a free hit in a double game week. But the double game week is when you want to probably be playing milder trips. So to use a free chip in a double game week means I can't play my bench boost on my wild card. So then I'm thinking, well, when am I going to, or my triple captain, sorry. So when am I going to use those? I think if you're kind of missing chips, if you've used your tips already, I think you have to be prioritizing the players who play in all of the games, around that period. So Leicester's fixtures from now until the end of the season are unbelievable. And I think if you've used your chips, Leicester are an absolute dream. I know their form is shaky, but I would be getting in Pereira or Chilwell and probably Vardy. Or Maddison. I mean, Vardy's probably a bit risky because he's out of favour. Maddison gets rotated a bit. But I think, I'd be getting in probably 2 Leicester players. Liverpool as well. They've got games all through that period. So, you can turn to those players when you're looking for to get someone who scored. West Ham as well, great fixtures. Felipe Anderson, Fabianski. If you can start filling your team up with these players in preparation for the game week 22, 23, 24, then you can get a pretty decent squad out because they've all got good fixtures and they've all got games, and the form's a bit shaky, but hopefully they can pick up some before then. I'm probably looking at building a relatively decent team up for game week 31, getting through game week 31, using a chip of some description in game week 32. I haven't decided what yet, bench boost or something. Getting to game week 33, free hitting in that, and then game week 35, triple captain on Liverpool at home to Huddersfield. So something along those lines. I think a lot of people are going to be using a chip in game week 31, and then you're kind of, I don't know whether you're kind of playing catch up a bit off the back of that. I think if you can use these weeks to actually get a team out for 31, then you've got a bit of an advantage using the chips a bit later on. So that's kind of my strategy, but we just don't really know what the fixtures are going to do. We don't know when the doubles are coming. We can kind of guess there's probably going to be a double game week 32, but until we know for sure, it's quite hard to predict still. So I think we're in doubt, and you've got Leicester and Liverpool who have got some good games, and West Ham. So they're the players that I think you should be prioritising, and then you can adapt as you see fit.
Yeah, fair enough. Dave, have you nailed yourself down a little strategy there for your team, or is it sort of see how we go?
I have a loose plan right now. I think one thing I'll just start with my opinion on these blanks and doubles. It's so hard to get excited about them because it is quite tricky this year. Which actually I'm quite happy with, because I remember over the summer when we were just having a few scout planning meetings, and myself, Mark, and Neil were all together, and we were discussing chips, and we thought we knew exactly where each chip would go based on what we guessed where the blank gameweeks were going to be, and we thought, it'll just be the same as last year. And actually, for it to be quite different is a good thing, because it does mean that there's going to be lots of people doing lots of very different things, and that all hinges around the fact that we've got a blank, then a double, then another blank, then game week 34, and then another double, and then there's probably no doubles after 35 is what it looks like right now. Of course, that could change, but that obviously is an issue, because basically the issue is where do you play the wild card? I think that's the tricky thing for a lot of people, because some people might end up playing it in game week 32, some people might play it in game week 34 after having tried to get through the blanks and doubles without the use of that particular chip. So it is very. If you're struggling this year, it's completely understandable. Everybody else is as well. So don't be discouraged by the fact that it is a bit of a mind bender this year. What I'm looking at right now at the moment is to kind of do some similar things to what I did last year, which was to go into that first blank and build a team for it, like I said, without using a chip, so that I can get through that particular week. Maybe go in there with somewhere between 8 to 10 players, and effectively try and recreate what is probably going to be the most popular free hit squad for that week. And the reason I don't want to use the free hit then is because I feel like it has more power as a differential chip in the later game weeks. Because if you look at game week 31, we've got 5 matches, we've got 10 teams playing. It's quite a small pool of players. And as we said, a lot of the teams we're not fussed about. So Chelsea are playing there. Lots of reasons to be put off Chelsea. Everton as well, lots of reasons to be put off there. You've got Bournemouth, Huddersfield, Fulham, Newcastle, lots of teams that it's hard to get excited by. And I would be surprised if the most popular free hit squad in that game week doesn't have 3 Liverpool players, maybe 3 Leicester players, and maybe 3 West Ham players at a minimum. And then really most of the points are going to come from a very small pool of players. So if I'm going in on that with a free hit, I'm not going to make up any ground. I'm not going to make up any headway on people. But if I'm playing that chip in, say, game week 32 or game week 33, when there's a much wider pool of players available, then it does for me it means there's more options for you to
get it wrong.
To get it wrong, true, but I just see them as greater opportunities. I understand playing. Lots of people are looking at playing that free hit chip in game week 31, but I think that's like a safe option, which doesn't mean it's the wrong one. Normally 9 times out of 10 this season I've taken the safe option, so I totally get it. But I just think there's more opportunity in those later game weeks to go for something a bit more different. And the same with the wild card as well. So what I'm looking at right now is to go into that game week 31 with dead end my team into that game week effectively. Then in game week 32, either play the free hit or the wild card. I'm inclined towards the wild card right now, but it might change my mind depending on what actual fixtures get put into that game week. Then play the free hit probably in game week 33. That's what I did last season. I was quite successful, was to play it in the second blank game week when there was slightly more fixtures, because the fact that everybody had used largely everybody had used their free hit chip in the smaller blank game week, once they got to the slightly bigger one, there's still enough blanks for it to be an issue for people, and it still becomes a stumbling block. So free hitting then, again, if less people are free hitting, then you kind of put yourself in a better position to get one over them, if that makes sense. If you can match the free hit squad in the small one without the free hit chip, and then free hit in a game week when other people aren't, I actually think that's a more powerful thing to do. And
I think one problem is that 3 of the 4 most informed teams in City, United, and Spurs all blank in that 31. So if you're kind of preparing for that game week 31 fixture and getting in your West Ham players, your Liverpool players, your Leicester players, whatever, you're going to have to be losing or not considering those 3 teams. And I think this is the problem with this whole chip strategy, save it right to the end of the season. You actually run the risk of missing out on some big hauls from informed players and teams who have got decent fixtures in the build up to it. So you've really got to find the balance between.
That's it. It's a balance, isn't it?
It is a balance.
You've got a bench at the end of the day, and I know it can be scary to leave big players on it, like Aguero this week. But for the long term thing, I think it's a pretty good result.
Yeah.
And on that note, quickly as well, Dave, you were saying about sort of the blank game weeks in particular. There's a chance that there's not a very high score, or at least not a big disparity between the points between people who've done whatever, free hit, not free hit, taking hits themselves. I don't think there'll be that big a disparity. Most of the time, they're pretty underwhelming. I think the one decent one was the one where Salah scored about 80 points on his own, but everyone else did nothing. And it's just about getting lucky and getting that 1 or 2 players that will score well in that week, which the chips don't necessarily dictate that. So I think personally, if you've used your free hit chip, for a start, you've obviously got to count those points that you made on that. So some people may have made 15, 20 points from their free hit. I don't know. So just factor that in. And then I would just look at one of the blank game weeks and I would just write it off. I wouldn't even worry about it. I'd go into it with 4 or 5 players. I wouldn't strategize my whole team around going in or out with all these transfers, because the chances are you won't score 20 points less than most other people. And you may have already got that back earlier in the season, if you see what I mean. So,
and I don't think you can plan for 2 blanks sandwiched in between.
Well, that's it. You pretty much can't. So for me, you've got to almost write one off rather than just have a little piece of every one. By all means, Leicester, Liverpool, West Ham, we've talked about them. Great, go for them. But aside from that, I wouldn't really
get a good captain. Get use your chances to get the key players in for those weeks.
You want the good teams in the double game weeks really who are going to play, and I think that's where you should be focusing your attention. Having said all that, my team is currently set up to dead end in game week 31, and I'll personally probably be doing the whole sort of dead end team with 31 and 33 in mind, but using the free hit in 32 for the double game week. Probably that's the route. I think I've got 6 players at the moment who play, so my 4 transfers in between, because I've already used this week's one, will give me 10 players for this blank game week if I want to. So it's just the way my team's fallen. So that's personally what I'd be doing anyway.
We dead end every week, Luke. So I'm sure this period is going to be no exception for us.
I mean, I think
whatever it says a dead end.
No, I was just going to say, the tricky thing obviously is, you may end up having to, if you short on some chips, you may have to, write off one of the particular game weeks. And the thing is, it can be tricky to work out, which one that makes sense to do. The other thing, of course, the other changing factor is we don't know when the fixtures are going to come. What I put on the screen now is just got a handy little tool that a lot of people will already know about already. Something that's done by Ben Krellin, who is big on the blank and double game weeks, really helpful for advice, and he's got a spreadsheet which we can get a link for in the description that just helps visualize. A lot of this is trying to get your head around what's happening and when. And if you're trying to work out which game weeks you want to prioritize and which ones you don't, then what he has on there is very, very helpful. And we've used it on Scout. We've had him do a couple of articles for us as well, which have been really helpful. And as I said, it really is just, for a lot of people, it is just trying to visualize what's happening and when, and the way that he's lays it all out is very helpful for working out which of the game weeks has more opportunity or has less opportunity. Definitely worth considering using him. One thing that I just kind of wanted to touch on, which I think is an issue for a lot of people, is the triple captainship, because really it's kind of, for those of us who sort of have it, of course, it's where to play it actually looks like a bit of an issue, and there's nowhere that right now I want to do it. And actually, I've said all season, and I'm not the only one. Lots of other people would have said the same thing. That I want to use it in a double game week, and I would be kicking myself if I used it in a single game week and it didn't come off. But as you aren't the only one saying that you might want to use it in that Huddersfield game, where I'm actually looking to use it is game week 38 possibly.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah. So
I said at the start of the season that was my plan.
Yeah, because it worked so well for a lot of people at the end of last season. In fact, Yusuf won it, I think, with the whole thing with the triple captain on, I think, Salah on the last day of the season. The games that look nice on that particular day, I think, it's Man United at home to Cardiff, which if Cardiff are already down or they're definitely up, that could be a bit of a bloodbath. Other one is Spurs against Everton. That just, surely neither of those teams are going to be playing for anything. Both defences they'll have their flip flops on already. Although I think Everton already have their flip flops on right now, so they'll just have no shoes on by that point.
I actually know when the best time to use it is.
Oh, what's that?
A couple of weeks ago when Aguero scored a hat-trick.
It's very helpful, Luke.
So there you go.
What we need is a time travel chip. Go back in time and then put your chip on that one.
For me, if you didn't use it in that week, you're going to do very well to match that. And for me, I can't get a normal captain right. So a triple is basically a throwaway trip to me. I'm not even bothered about it.
Just don't get a red card and you done quite well.
Exactly. If I don't get a red card, if I get 2 in a double game week off of it, for example, then I'm happy with that.
But I mean, so as you've obviously talked about, that Huddersfield game. I mean, how serious are you about using it in that particular game? Bearing in mind that we always try and say we wouldn't use it in a single game week.
Well, the way the blanks and the doubles are, I just find it hard to see how I could fit a triple captain in a double game week, because the game weeks I'm looking at are either going to be a free hit or a wild card or a bench boost. So that actually the triple captain kind of is the bottom of the priority amongst those, because
there's so much luck in it.
Yeah, there is, exactly. There's so much, and with a bench boost, if you use a bench boost in a double game week, you're pretty much going to get 16, 20 points. With a triple captain, you get anywhere from 2 points to 20 points max.
Well, I mean, you could literally. Didn't one of them, someone like Sanchez, someone get 70 points off of it one week?
Yeah.
So it can happen. But
then you think if everyone's captained him anyway, you're only getting an extra 20. If he gets 25 points, you're only getting 25 points from it. I still think the free hit is the best chip, and then the bench boost is, if you just hit 1 or 2 goals from your bench, then you could be looking at a fairly comfortable 20-25 points. Whereas if you hit 25 points for a triple captain, you have absolutely smashed it.
Yeah. I personally would not base my strategy around the triple captain.
No, it's exactly what I think.
It's worthy of that. Now, some people could argue that doing wild cards is also not worthy of that, but from my experience, I jumped up like 150k rank 1 week from some getting lucky essentially by doing it well. So I do think that it's more possible with a wild card.
I think saving it till near the end of the season on a single game week is quite logical. If Liverpool and City are locked in a title race and it's going to go down to goal difference, if they're level on points or something, and they've got Huddersfield at home, then I just think Salah is just such a strong captain in that. And then you look at the last game of the season for all the reasons David mentioned. There's normally so many goals on that last day of the season, and if you've got someone like Kane or someone who's actually a bit of a differential because they might have been in and out of the team for a while, then he's going to play that game. It gives you a chance, doesn't it? The triple captain I can imagine us, Luke, like on the last day of the season, we're both ranked at like 200k, and we're like, right, this is our last throw of the dice, and we just triple captain, like, I don't know,
Pascal Gross.
Not Blassie again.
Andy Carroll, like, because Hernandez and Arnautovic are injured or something. Triple captain Andy Carroll, and then he scores 4 goals, and we both finish like 10k. That's not going to happen, but I don't know. It's nice having the triple captain just because you've got that shred of hope. That's what I like about it. It always fails to deliver.
It's scary for me. As soon as that captain going up,
I don't like touching it. It always burns a hole in my pocket. I hate it.
Oh God, I just dread to think every minute, just sitting there thinking he's not scored yet. Oh God.
I know. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely thinking of saying it to the end of the season. I think that Huddersfield game or the last game week for me.
Yeah, no, I think the thing with the triple captain, I think you kind of already touched on it already, is I feel like it's a bit of an an overrated chip. I mean, I don't want to knock the chip. I like the chip, but I don't think it's as powerful as a bench boost can be, and I don't think it's as powerful as a free hit can be as well. So it's definitely not as powerful as perhaps I initially thought when it first turned up, because
No, I just think it's not as consistent. I don't think powerful is the
Yeah.
right word, because I think
But
you
no, but I
certainly
think
can
that-
net 70 points for it,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is more.
okay, yeah. I mean,
it's just the most inconsistent ship.
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of that's really what I meant. Really, the inconsistency of it means that there's more risk with it, because really it's relying on one thing, and that's that individual player scoring. Whereas your bench boost can rely on 4 different players. Your wild card or your free hit obviously relies on 15 or 11, depending on how you've used it or whatever. So so as we wind down into this sort of part of the season, looking at what needs to go where, the triple captain doesn't really feel as important in those double game weeks, because and again, it's just because that first one is sandwiched between the 2 blanks. I mean, that's the tricky thing, is that the wild card's got to go somewhere, and if you're thinking like me, then you're thinking the wild card probably has to go in game week 32, so that I could do something with that game week and then survive game week 33 with a free hit. So I mean, it as we said at the top, it's a frustrating set of fixtures, but maybe that's a good thing in inverted commas, because it does just kind of challenge us a little bit more. One thing I think we should just touch on is for those who maybe don't have a wild card, or I think what we're all agreed on is that if we're going to try and build a squad up for game week 31, the sort of players that we might look at, we've obviously touched on it a bit already. Teams like Leicester, West Ham, Liverpool, kind of an obvious one. If we focus sort of more just on Leicester and West Ham, are there any particular individuals from those teams that stand out? So let's go to you first, Luke. Any Leicester or West Ham players that are on your radar right now?
I mean, I think there's some pretty obvious ones at the moment. Chilwell and Pereira just look pretty good options. Obviously they can get attacking points as well as bonus. Pereira's got so many ways he can get points, and Chilwell's been arguably in better form when I've watched him play of late as well. So, those two are great. I think, as has already touched on, Vardy's obviously potentially an option, so is Maddison, but both hit in the odd bench. I think even Damari Gray could be an option, because he's just really cheap. I think he's a really good player. I think there is a player in him. He sort of, to me, it kind of reminds me of a very early Mahrez before he blew up. And I'm not saying he's going to do a Mahrez and become amazing, but I think there's something about him like that where I think it could happen. West Ham, the obvious ones, Felipe Anderson and Arnautovic. You even got Diop if you fancy West Ham for clean sheets, or Balbuena could be back soon. I mean, they're just so cheap, so why not, right? But Fabianski's obviously, I think a lot of people have got him as well as another option. But they're probably the only names I'm really thinking of right now. I can't really think of any others that I'd be looking at particularly.
What about you, Az? Anyone outside of that crop of players that are worth thinking about?
Not really from those two. I think Pereira versus Chilwell's an interesting one. I think they're stats wise, they kind of do well on different things. I know we had an article on them on the site a little while ago, which was really interesting. Pereira gives you that kind of goal threat. Chilwell gives you a bit more assist potential and bonus and those kind of things. So I really like the idea of having one of those in. Other teams like Liverpool double up, I think is a really sound way to go. I mean, I've got Robertson and Salah. I'd really like to get in someone like Alexander-Arnold or Mane or someone like that to, double up either in defence or in midfield. And I don't think you can kind of write off Burnley, because they're in a good run of form. They've got a game in Game Week 31. In the next 5 games, they've got Newcastle, Palace, and Leicester. And Ashley Barnes is absolutely smashing it, and he's so cheap. So I think he's a good shout as well for someone to bring him.
And Bournemouth as well. We seem to kind of ignore them. They have got some really good games amongst that. I think obviously Brooks being injured is kind of the concern. If he was back, I think he's a great option. And then there's also Wilson. I don't know what the situation with him is if he's back, but Josh King's also been doing pretty well. I think those are names that...
Fraser as well. I mean, Fraser's been a bit off the boil, isn't he? But you've got to think
I think he's suffering from just the fact that he's still creating some chances. I think he's just suffering from the fact that Brooks hasn't been in the side, Wilson hasn't either.
Yeah.
And as the creative hub, if the edge of the sword is not there, then that is going to impact him a bit. But as you said, the fixtures are looking good for them, and if they can just kind of get back to where they were, then they're probably worth looking at.
It's those free hit teams are going to, you would have thought, have a couple of Bournemouth players in, because their games are so good. I just think.
I mean, just one other team. I mean, looking at the fixture list, who I don't think we've mentioned at all, is Newcastle. I mean, defensively, I think, with the Rafa Benitez team, you've always got a chance of a clean sheet. They were very unlucky against Wolves. I can't believe Dubravka, flapping at that ball. But, someone like Lascelles, someone like Shah, who scored 2 goals a few weeks ago in one match. He got an assist against Wolves as well. He's a good bit. You've got the new guy, Almiron. Is that right? Almiron, is that right? Maybe.
I think so. I think that's right.
He looked lively when he came on. He was, he won a couple of free kicks. He's so direct when he gets the ball. I think he, in this run of Huddersfield at home, Burnley at home, West Ham away, Everton at home, Bournemouth away, I think Newcastle are going to get a couple of clean sheets, and I think Almiron's going to announce himself. So I think if you're looking for a punt, he's a really good shout, and he should make Rondon a better option as well. And I like Rondon. I don't like him for fantasy football, but I like him as a player. And he'd be an intriguing kind of player if he could, get a few goals in this period to think about getting in for the run-in.
I think we've been really lucky, by the way, in some ways, how the fixtures on, because a lot of those teams that have those consistent games, like we said, the less in the blank game weeks, have actually got really good fixtures just generally all around. So I know a lot of people are saying, like, you're getting rid of premium assets here if you've got good games. Yes, and into the case of Man City, I can certainly see the point. But for the rest of them, I'm sure it's a bit of not sort of a much of a muchness. That, these sort of lesser team players have got really good games in and all around it. So it doesn't really concern me that much. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, it is weird, isn't it? Like, you look at Newcastle, look at Leicester, you look at Liverpool, look at West Ham. It's a sea of green, sea of blue.
All good games.
Yeah. I think there's definitely potential there, but I still think ignore City at your peril. I think people are going to be going on that run without City players, and I think that's a bad move.
Yeah, definitely be scary. I mean, I think one team that I think I'm definitely going to be going for right now, just because of how good their fixtures look, is Leicester. And just what we've got on the screen right now is just showing how Maddison's comparing for chances created over the last four. Third best in the league. Only Gross and Moutinho created more. Also in that list, Felipe Anderson's in the top 10. Top 15, but still in a nice area, and has generally done well in games against teams who are in the lower half of the team. But you mentioned two other players from Leicester, Demarai Gray and Harvey. We haven't actually mentioned Harvey Barnes here, but I'm going to mention him now. I'm going to more fully into Joe here and bring out the goals imminent table. And Harvey Barnes is very much in a great position on there. Only of the people on that particular table right now, the only one with more shots on target in the last 4 game weeks is Pedro. So basically, Harvey Barnes is due a goal. Demarai Gray's shot count is very similar to Barnes over the last 4 game weeks. So those two players could definitely be a nice little differential. But there's a few others on here that we've kind of mentioned. There's also Rondon's on there as well on the goals imminent table. Newcastle's fixture is very nice. If Newcastle are in good form, he generally shoots a lot. As I said, he's on the goals imminent table as well. Also on there, Pascal Gross as well. I actually quite like Brighton's fixtures myself, and he has just been creating chances left, right and centre. So there are definitely lots of options out there. And the handy thing is, sometimes it can be easy to just look at that schedule and think, oh yeah, those fixtures look nice. I'll put in someone who perhaps isn't that tested statistically. But thankfully, we've got some players who are actually performing quite well statistically already, so that when they do get those nice fixtures, hopefully it's a nice little fantasy marriage of form fixture, and we do get those points. Which, I mean, as is obviously mentioned there, Man City just kind of look like they're going to dominate those fixtures. But I still think that there's a decent chance that if you can maybe cover them off with maybe one player, and then you build everything else around that, towards having a team set up for that first blank game week. With some of the options that we've mentioned here, Leicester looking like they've got some really good ones. Pereira and Chilwell look very nice. Choosing one of those will be very good. One of maybe Maddison, Barnes or Gray as well. Gross when Brighton have actually got a fixture. Anderson as well, West Ham as well. I think if you can make sure that they're your cheaper players, or you've got a fair few of those, they have shown form that they can deliver in these nice fixtures, which is nice, because it's nice when fantasy football throws us a bone. It's given us a horrible set of double game week and blank game week fixtures, but there's some decent players in that mid-price, mid-range bracket that are at least in enough form for me to feel confident transferring them in, which I think is really the bottom line. It's peace of mind for me over this next couple of weeks. I want to be making transfers. I'm sure you guys will both agree.
Yeah, for me, it's only really City that are giving me nightmares. I think everything else has fallen quite nicely, really. So, a lot of my plans involve not having City players, and that is a scary factor. Apart from that, I think I'm not too worried.
I think it's like what Tom Ryan says in the chat is, the issue is that you've got Man U, Man City and Wolves without a game in 31. So they're the kind of. I mean, if I'm planning for 31, I've got 3 United in Pogba, Shaw, and Rashford. I've got 3 Wolves in Jimenez, Jota, and Doherty, and then I've got Sterling. So I don't really want to lose any of those players because they're all doing quite well for me. But if I'm going to plan for 31, then I'm going to have to lose some of those players. So it's.
I saw Andy post something on Twitter about that. It was, I can't remember exactly which players, but I think it was largely similar players there. If you sell them for 31, and so this obviously is playing at the back of my mind as well. You sell them for 31 and then you want them back, it'll cost you something like 1.9 million if you got them around the time that most people did. So Doherty, a lot of us got him at 4.4. Pogba, a lot of us got him at 8 million, 182, something like that. So I mean, yeah, that is definitely a factor worth thinking about. If you're going to want those guys back, you may end up having to spend a lot of the profit you earn from them just to get them back. So yeah, that's a good point. Another annoying thing that we have to factor in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
the template's so strong, isn't it?
There is that, but then also you could argue that it's just about getting the right players and not necessarily the expensive ones. So then the value gets less important as you get to the end of the season. It's just about having those right couple of players, not necessarily the most expensive ones. So, with most of the expensive midfielders not doing too well. I mean, Sterling and Salah, yeah, fair enough. Man and Mane arguably, but they're not that expensive. And then you got the forwards. You haven't got the 12.5 Kanes and stuff in the equation at the moment. So there is some money around. There's so many good cheap options as well, like we've said. So yeah, you may have to pay a little bit more when you get them back, but it might just mean one downgrade on one player somewhere else. Are you that bothered? I don't know. We'll see, I guess. There'll be some cheapie that scores a load of points. It always happens. There'll be someone you don't expect that will get loads. So
and if you could make the move at the right time, like if you can sell Rashford and bring in Rondon, at the right time for this run, or if you can just call something like that right, then you get the jump on everyone else who keeps these players in for this run and they aren't playing. Because if everyone's keeping Rashford for the 2 blanks and you sell him for someone who scores in both games, then the value you've lost is irrelevant because you've made the points. It's all about points, as they say.
That is a very good point. Well, I think now's really the time. I think we should move on just to the most recent game week. It can be quite easy to kind of get sucked into the distant future, in the words of Flight of the Conchords. But maybe we should be looking at something a little bit closer at hand, which is Blank Gameweek 27. Obviously, we've talked about it a little bit already, but let's have a look at our clean sheets and differentials first.
Yes, so let's do clean sheets first. I think it was a good week for us on clean. No, it wasn't. No, I'm looking at the wrong week. It was an awful week for us. I think none of us got it right except for Luke.
Hey.
Man, look at that. See,
my clean sheet ratio is pretty good now, I think.
You can see how much it means to it.
38%. Yeah. Which is the worst of all of us, but yeah. Well, you had Liverpool last week, got a clean sheet. Brighton was Joe's, and that was a no. David, yours was Wolves, that was a no. Southampton, that was mine, and that was a no. So yeah, wasn't too great. But it's a new week, and let's see what we're going for this week. David, who have you got?
My clean sheet this week is Newcastle. I just I always fancy a Rafa Benitez team to keep a clean sheet in a game that I think that they'll win, because I think that's kind of how it works. They're not really a score one more than you type team. They're not going to win games 4-3, 3-2. They're going to do it. They're going to do it 1 or 2-0. Home game against Huddersfield just kind of seems like the perfect fixture for them, just to kind of close out a nice routine, well drilled. Rondon scoring from a corner, maybe Almiron scoring a 92nd minute second goal off the bench on the break. There we go. If that happens, I should put
1-0 all over that game, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I just can't see Huddersfield going and scoring there. The Newcastle team coached by Benitez is just it's not good. It's just too strong for them. So yeah, Newcastle for me.
I agree. Luke?
Yeah, I actually got the last pick, and you both picked the 2 options I probably would have gone for. So I basically had a toss-up, really, of Arsenal at home to Southampton or Leicester at home to Palace, and I've chosen Leicester. I don't think either of Leicester or Arsenal can necessarily be trusted for clean sheets, but Palace generally all season struggled for goals most of the time. So we're all looking to get these Leicester players in, and they can go on runs of getting clean sheets and have. I know their form's been up and down, but when you watch them play, I just think there's something there about Leicester. I don't know if it's just the manager that's holding them back. Maybe that's a bit harsh, but think they've got makings of a really good team again. So yeah, Leicester at home to Palace. So I think they've got a decent shout. But yeah, 38%. Don't listen to me.
I think like the clean sheets are getting a lot tougher because apart from Liverpool and occasionally City when Luke doesn't pick them,
Hey, they got
Don't rub it in.
it's really hard to predict. I think big teams seem to be conceding, loads this year. I mean, I've gone for Spurs, but I'm not really that confident with it away at Burnley. Burnley have picked up some form.
Watch out for Ashley Barnes. He's the clean sheet
Yeah,
ruiner.
I'm a bit worried about Ashley Barnes, but looking at the fixtures, there's no one else really that I mean, Arsenal home to Southampton. I don't trust Arsenal to keep a clean sheet.
It'd probably be Liverpool again or someone.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool United game, that could be 0-0, that could be 4-4. I've got no idea on that. So I'll go for Spurs. I mean, Spurs are in a good run of form, and they've always got a chance of a clean sheet because they've got a good squad. I do wonder when Burnley's bubble was going to burst. That's a hard one to say. Because I can't quite believe their form has picked up in the way that it has, and it all seems to come from putting Tom Heaton back in goal, which is just absolutely bizarre. And Ashley Barnes' form, I actually reckon they'll be all right now, which I thought they were sort of dead and buried a few weeks ago. So yeah, I'll have Spurs, but yeah, not too confident on it. So moving on to differentials. I mean, you thought we did badly at clean sheets. We also did badly at differentials. I went for Diego Jota. He got 1 point. Really disappointed with him, especially as I had my own team. He had that knock, and then he didn't really do anything all game, and then got subbed off early. So that was really frustrating. He's missed the game against Bristol City now. I'm just kind of hoping he's going to be back in the lineup. It's never nice when your player goes off and then the player who comes on does quite well. So Traore got the assist and they crossed that ball in, and then they scored and got the it was a bit frustrating. David, you went for Llorente, assist, 5 points, boom, beats us. Joe went for Gross, got 2 points, and Luke, you went for Nathan Redmond, who got 1 point. So yeah, pretty naff all round really. Luke, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So I've gone for Camarasa. I just think Cardiff have been playing so well recently. I know he's not been in the team himself due to injury, I think, more than anything else. Just on his way back, I think he's one of sort of their best players. So I think he'll come in and start. Not certain, of course, but Watford just seem really vulnerable to me at set pieces. Now, I know Watford have been doing well clean sheets of late, but I think that's more due to Ben Foster just being an absolute superman. Set pieces, they've looked really vulnerable, and obviously Camarasa takes set pieces, so there's no more science than that behind it, really. Extremely cheap, come back into the team, hopefully, potential from points from all over the place. Under 5%.
He's been quite disappointing, actually, Camarasa, because I really liked it. I remember a few months ago I was saying, he's kind of the perfect 4.5, 4.6 midfield. I think he's absolutely brilliant. He's been injured for quite a while, hasn't he? And he's,
I think it's some injury, but Cardiff, this squad main more than anything. But I think I see what you mean. But at the end of the day, it's a 4.5 midfielder.
Absolutely, I think you get what you pay for.
Yeah, we're spoiled by, was it Boyd? I can't remember, from Burnley, who every time you needed him,
he was great.
Yeah, he was a player. I mean, Wan-Bissaka this year, you kind of get the same.
Yeah,
apart this week you need him, but
yeah, if you're getting over 2 points most weeks, which he does provide, as long as he's not injured, then happy days.
Yeah. I like Camarasa. I'm going for Almiron, who I mentioned earlier, for the same reasons, really. I just thought he had a really good introduction to the Premier League last week. I think he gives Newcastle something really exciting. I think he's going to be a real spark in their team. And as I said, every time he gets the ball, he's looking to drive forward. So I think he's against Huddersfield at home. Anyone can score against them, and I think he could be in for a good week. And I think, as I said, I think he could be in for a good run if he can find his place in the team, which he should do because he's their record signing, and hit the mark, get off the mark against Huddersfield. I think for the run-in, he could be a really good pick. David? Yeah,
so I've gone for Ashley Barnes, and I kind of have to really. I was in my own team, so if I don't back him for differentials, then what's he doing in my squad? The great thing, I mean, we've already kind of talked about him already. He's in great form, but he just looks very capable of sustaining that, and has done for several weeks, which is why I've held on to him for so long. And eventually, accidentally paid dividends when Rashford got benched for me in the most recent game week. I've just put back on the screen the chart we had from right at the start when we were talking about Aguero and about how well he'd done for shots on target in the last 4 game weeks. Second place in that list is Ashley Barnes. He's up there with your Manes, your Salahs, your Rashfords over that particular period. And when someone that price is performing that well against these big premium must-have options, then he's someone worth keeping. And obviously people are looking ahead to game week 31. I was thinking about Barnes was going to be the person I could switch to Aubameyang for this game week, but actually I don't want to do that. If I'm dead ending to game week 31, Burnley have got a nice fixture that week. Barnes looks like the kind of guy I want to keep, and he looks like he can score against anybody because he even scored away at Man United as well. So for the price that you pay for Barnes, and of course the fact that he's under 5% as well, he looks a fantastic option, and I can't really find anything wrong with him, to be honest.
And seems to be taking the penalties now after he took the one off.
That's right.
Wood, right?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to be 100% because the first penalty he took, Wood had been subbed. The second penalty he took, he won it himself. Having in the first half, he absolutely should have been given a stonewall penalty that the referee didn't give. So you could maybe argue that he took that one because he as a person was owed it. But so I think he's on penalties, but I don't want to say 100% he's definitely on penalties because historically I think Wood has taken them. So. Something to keep an eye on, but by the looks of it, he doesn't need the penalties. By the way that he's playing, shots inside the box, shots is 13 inside the box, 14 in total. He may not even need the penalties, so he does look fantastic in my opinion.
You wouldn't expect Burnley to get that many penalties. They haven't really got players that run trickly into the
that's true.
box either as well.
That is true. Yeah.
Very lucky. Yeah.
I like Barnes though. He's someone I'm thinking about getting into my team. I've still got Ings for some reason, and he's just
and I've got Kamara, so Barnes is penciled in for coming into me.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, same. That's it for clean sheets and differentials. So
yeah, nice one. Well, just on Ings versus Barnes, I seem to remember that about around New Year's sort of time, end of the year, there was this kind of crossroads where Ings and Barnes both looked quite good, and it's unlucky because Ings did get the injuries. You could argue maybe he's injury prone. But it's just interesting to see that those two players were they were the two options, and things have gone very differently depending on if you went for Barnes.
Sums up my season, David.
Yeah. Sorry to bring it back to that.
Injury prone.
Sorry?
Did you say maybe injury prone?
Well, yeah. I don't want to be too harsh on him in case he's listening.
He's been a nightmare, Danny Ings. I mean, that was it last match when he missed a 1-on-1, and then like 5 minutes later went off injured after 30 minutes. I was just like, really?
I'm not being funny though, but I said it before. He hasn't played for like 4 or 5 years, probably that many games in a season. And even if you think you're back, your body's just not used to it.
Yeah, because it's muscular as well.
He's a good player though. I like him.
I really like him. I do.
When he plays, he's absolutely great. But
just can't stay fit.
Number one rule of fantasy football.
I know, Luke. Don't get Danny Ings. Yeah,
it's a very specific rule. Very specific rule. Well, let's just round off then with what our individual transfer plans are. So we'll start with you, Luke. I've got your bus team on the screen. So talk us through it. How much is going to change between now and the deadline?
It's probably going to stay exactly as you see it. I imagine because I've already made my swap. Felipe Anderson's come in. I just really like West Ham's games, and Fulham are the most forgiving side. Is that the right word?
Most obliging.
Obliging, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, they're the most obliging side in the league. West Ham can't necessarily be trusted, but I'd like to think that there'll be goals in that game. He came in for Sane simply because I can't stand the sight of the guy. Since then, we've obviously seen City have got good games, but I still think he's the wrong player to have now, unfortunately, which I still can't quite believe. I still think he's he should be in their best team, personally. But again, how can I question Pep? So there we go. He's out and Felipe Anderson's in. I'm just going to stick as it is. Aubameyang captain, just because it's the obvious pick for me. I said Felipe Anderson would be my differential if there's any noise about Aubameyang not playing for any reason. But yeah,
you're looking strong this week.
As you can see, it's made up of a lot of cheap players. I've got some money in the bank. It's basically all going towards that dead end team for game week 31. So that's kind of dictated how I'm going to do it. I look strong every week, Az. Just doesn't matter.
That's the problem. We know what that means when you look strong. I feel the same.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one. I've had a couple of weeks where I thought I looked strong. I thought I looked really strong without Sané. So with Sané and without Sterling in the last one, and that obviously went particularly well. I'm like you, Luke. I'm prepping to get rid of Sané. I think really the key was the fact that he was kind of included in the B team that beat Newport County, and ahead of 2 quite important games for them. I don't think the League Cup final is going to be difficult, but Pep does have to start his best team in that. And, if a lot of those key players are getting rested for that cup game and Sané is playing in that, it just kind of looks like he's been demoted for a bit. So it's an easy out for me.
And to be fair, his form has been bad.
Yeah, it's been poor.
He hasn't looked good. So,
easy transfer out for him. Who I bring in is still up in the air. Basically, I've got 3 blank game week players this particular game week, and that's Richarlison, Digne, and Sané. And because I've still got the 2 free transfers intact, I think I would like to maybe take a hit this week and just get myself set for that dead end. We kind of didn't. I wanted to make this sort of little connection between the Aguero hokey cokey and if you are dead ending for 31. If you want to dead end for 31, doing a hokey cokey with Aguero and Aubameyang does kind of put you back a lot. If you've got a limited set of transfers to use between now and then, and I think if I was to use 3 transfers now, take a -4, get Digne, Richarlison, and Sané out for Pereira, Maddison, and Anderson, I'd be quite happy with what that gives me. It would mean I'd probably have to weigh up how I cover Man City, but I've still got a bit of money in the bank. I actually think the Son bandwagon might come to an end soon, so maybe I could upgrade him into a Man City midfielder, maybe a De Bruyne or something. So thankfully, with the moves that I'm looking to make, it would actually still leave me with a fair bit of money to just, having no Man City players this week and then maybe looking to bring one of them in, maybe with a bit of an upgrade somewhere. But yeah, happily enough, I'm in a position where I think I can build for game week 31 and still put out a team for this game week that actually looks strong. I think Leicester could do well against Palace. I want their players long term anyway. And actually, for the captaincy, it's currently on Salah because I think that there will be more goals in that Man United-Liverpool game than I think a lot of people would predict. Because I think Man United defensively, no clean sheets at home under Solskjaer so far. Liverpool's defence not been quite as good in recent weeks as it has been earlier in the season. So I think there could be goals in that game, but if I was to bring in Anderson, then actually it actually helps simplify the captaincy a little bit because, as Luke's mentioned there, Fulham's defence very obliging. So very much looking at the game week 31 setup, and thankfully enough, there's people who link nicely between this game week and that one. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing. What about you, Az?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to captain Son. I know that. Kane's back in training, but won't be back. I wouldn't have thought for that game. Son is literally scoring in every match, and I think he's actually going a bit under the radar for this game. I know Heaton could put on another masterclass, but I fancy Spurs to still get a couple against Burnley. So I'm probably going to go for him. I'm not that Liverpool United game's a tricky one. The fixtures are all a bit funny, so yeah, not really too sure. In terms of transfers, I think Ings to Barnes looks sensible. He's got a big red flag. Barnes has got a decent run of games and a game in 31, so that fits the strategy. I'm also not too fond of having Shaw or Dean, so I could lose one of those for maybe Kolasinac or Chilwell, which I could afford to do. So I could do that, but I imagine it's going to be Ings to Barnes and Son captain.
You're not going to play Barnes though, are you? Because you want Spurs for a clean sheet.
Yeah, well, hedge my bets, Luke, and then I'm happy one way or the other.
Oh, right, of course.
Nice one.
I'd probably play Barnes over Shaw because I don't really want to play Shaw in that. Shaw just offers so little attacking wise. He's not.
Yeah. United for clean sheets generally, I just don't trust it yet. Solskjaer very much is about the attacking football, isn't he, rather than defensive football. So
no, I regret getting Shaw, so I could correct that.
Nice. Well, yeah. Thanks for talking us through what your teams are. One thing that's just worth saying: we haven't really had too much of an opportunity. We've been talking about the chips quite a lot to talk about captaincy for Blank Game Week 27. But thankfully enough, we did film a captaincy video, myself and Neil, on Monday, where we went into that particular issue on this microcosm of a game week in the grand scheme of things on Monday. So if you want a little bit more information on who you think you should captain for that game week, lots of options, as we've mentioned before. It's one of those weird game weeks where a differential like an Anderson or a Leicester player or something like that could be quite successful. So definitely make sure you go and watch that. Later in the week, we're going to have our team news video as well. Me and Neil will be doing that live on Friday, sometime in the afternoon around 3 o'clock. Obviously, it's an early deadline as well. So make sure you tune into that in the afternoon. And hopefully we'll have some news that will help our decisions in some way. And of course, we'll be having our Scoutcast next week as well. And by then, Joe will be back. So anyone sick and tired of my fans, which I hope will be fixed by the next time we do an episode of this, won't have to listen to them quite so loudly next time, so apologies on that one. But apart from that, it's a good night from me.
Good night.
Yeah, good night from me.
Good night all.